Now that we have hooked up our dynamic page coffee store with some data, let's go ahead and render more data content on the page. So now let's go ahead and add some more things, like we already have address and name. So let's add neighborhood as well, because neighborhood is something we also want to show to the user. So we can say neighborhood as the key. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we can pretty much get rid of this link because we don't need it. Similarly, we can also get rid of this one as well because that just was for testing. And what we can also do is, since we are accessing props.coffeestore for address, name, and neighborhood, we can pretty much destructure it right here. So we can just say address, name, neighborhood, and we can just say props.coffeestore. And this, we can change this to address and coffee store, and for neighborhood, let's remove it here as well. All right. Now let's go ahead and add a head element as well. Now, what we want is we want the title of our page to be the name of the coffee shop itself. So let's go ahead and add that and fix it. So we can just say head from next head and title right here. And here we can just say name because we have already destructured it over here. All right. Now let's save it because we have made a lot of changes, and let's check it out in the browser. All right. Head is not defined, so let's import it. We can say import head from next head. Save it. Go back. And it says that you cannot destructure address as it is undefined. And the reason for that is because we have destructured it before the loading state. So we need to do it after, because this needs to be the first one. Because remember how we got a undefined error before? So if the router is in the fallback state, we just want to return loading and just return out of this component. So let's, since we moved it down here, let's check it out now. And you can see that our page has been rendered. Beautiful. Let's look at our other coffee stores. And this page looks good. Now, one last thing before we move on for Refactor is, now with get static paths, we are essentially repeating these two params over and over. Now in the future, if we want to add another path, we need to repeat these params again. So there is an easier way to do that. And since this is an array, we can pretty much map it. So we can just say that const paths equals coffee stores data dot map. And here we can say coffee store. And what we are doing here is we are getting the ID directly from the coffee store data itself. This way we don't have to hard code these values, and we can pretty much make it dynamic. We can just say here that return params, because that's the internal data structure that we want to return, params, and then ID. And here the ID, remember, it needs to be a string. So we can just say coffee store.id. Now, and then instead of doing this now, we can just return paths, because remember, if the key name and the value name is paths, then we can just return paths like this. All right, hitting save, and let's go back. Now let's refresh the page. And you can see that this is the error we get if we don't provide it as a string, that a required parameter ID was not provided as a string. And we already knew that, but we still didn't do it, so it's on me. So let's just convert that to string. All right, now if you go back, and beautiful. So now we have our pages getting rendered as well. Sweet. All right, now that we have refactored our code a bit more, next let's take a look at styling our coffee store page so that it looks a lot more like this. All right, I'll see you in the next one.